Welcome to Winning the Game of Life. Known as Jungleman at the poker table, Dan Cates has gone from being the bag boy at McDonald's with no friends and a dead-end future to winning over $11 million in online poker, over $7 million in live tournaments, and is a World Series of Poker champion. He has found fame, fortune, been to incredible places all over the globe, and connected with some amazing people. It looks like Dan has won the game of life, but that is not the way he sees it. Dan sees winning as doing his part to help everyone in the world win. He knows he can't do it alone, though. He knows it's going to take a collective effort with anyone that wants to see the same thing. Join us each week as Dan starts the conversation to do just that. On the show, Dan will interview incredible individuals that have made the impossible possible. Those that have won the game of life, and those that want to help others win as well. Hit subscribe and follow Dan's journey on Instagram at @TheDanCates. Let's explore anyone and anything that can help make this world a better place, increasing the odds of us all winning the game of life. And now, here's your host, Dan Cates.
We now continue with part 2 of Dan's conversation with Phil Hellmuth. If you haven't checked out part 1, listen to it wherever you get your podcasts.
But I think that it's important for the audience to recognize, some of these less, I would say they're less obvious sort of skills that go beyond just studying sims and knowing math in poker games. I think some of the things we're talking about here are much more important than that. And even at some point, well, they are bigger picture, actually, even if they're a bit understated. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is the ability to connect with people. We call that EQ versus IQ, right? Emotional intelligence. And so I have some good emotional intelligence, even recognizing in myself that maybe I'm a little cocky at times with my wife's help. My wife is a genius too. And she's great. Yeah. She's very powerful, but she has no ego at all. I laugh at her. I'm like, hun, you're a Stanford doctor, for God's sakes. And, and everybody loves you and you get along well. But she doesn't have much confidence. She's beautiful. She's a black belt in karate. She's my age, so older, but I don't know. I'm still crazy about her physically, mentally, I'm all in with Kathy and she's amazing.
That's winning a life right there. That's really
that helps a lot. Yeah. And she's cooler than I am. And so occasionally I'm like, hey, how should I answer this text? But I think in connecting with people is important, right? And so I learned that the hard way, right? And so, Jungle, you and I might be hanging out and then some billionaire comes up to us and he's like, oh, that's Jungleman and Phil Hellmuth, right? I want to talk to him, right? I don't care if it's a billionaire or a regular person. I'm going to be really nice and I'm going to make maximum effort to connect with that person because that's important in life, and then I think, when it comes to the business stuff, being connected to, I think I have a different perspective than everybody else. So when I started playing with a bunch of billionaires in Palo Alto, I taught them all how to play better, right? Somebody like Mike the Mouth, and I remember I made a bunch of money, in the pandemic, right? And I don't want to tell that story. I'll just say this. We're talking about connecting with people, and I think that I immediately taught everybody to become. So if you look at Draymond Green, right, who is an amazing athlete, but amazing guy. His poker game is way up here as No Limit Hold'em because I've trained him. I've sent him. We played together a lot in the pandemic. We sent each other 100 texts, 500, 1,000 texts back and forth. I'm teaching him. Wow. I take pride. So am I going to beat him for much money the rest of our lives? No, because he's a hell of a poker player. And so is Chamath. And so are all of the guys that I'm fortunate enough to hang out with. My group, my billionaire group, as I'd like to call it, if they go and play with the New York guys, the New York billionaires, the Chicago billionaires, they're going to win
billionaire
because they've all been trained by me. So some people like Mike the Mouth would be, wow, you trained everybody. And so when we had an online game, I said, I want you to train this guy and train this guy. I'd have Mike call somebody. I'd have, Ben Yarush Jerusalem, call somebody and train them and help them, because, I mean, like, it's not just, and so I think that's a different perspective. I'm going to train all of but then also you have more of a relationship, right? But, I find myself fortunate to be involved in the groups I'm in, and they know that I'm not a hustler, I mean, I've been hanging out with Mr. Beast, and I said, Mr. Beast, listen, he came to my house right now. He's the second biggest YouTuber in the world, right? Or number one on YouTube. And, his Game of Thrones, he did the Squid Games. My wife and I just watched Squid Games because I want to watch his. So Squid Games took 12 years to make and 9 months to 100 million views. So Mr. Beast put his version of Squid Games out, and it had 100 million views within 5 hours.
Wow.
So, but here's a guy that, that has beat me playing Heads Up. But I said, listen, I'm going to go visit you in North Carolina, see your studio, and hang out and have some nice dinners with you. I don't want to overwhelm him, but I'm going to take poker off the table. No poker. And so most poker players are always trying to hustle. They want to get in the big game. They want to play with this guy. They want to play with that guy. And they disrespect the businessman too. How many times I heard some poker player in LA in 2000 saying, oh, this guy is a whale, he's a fish. And I'm like, dude, he made 200 million in business. All right. He's just here for entertainment. You're the fucking fish, And so all these guys, so I would defend, this is just in private conversation. So I have a little bit different view of the world. And yeah, Jungleman, I now think, as of about 9 months ago, I thought, wow, I can actually become a billionaire. In fact, I think I'm going to become a billionaire. And that's not a goal. I'm not trying to become a billionaire, and I'm not saying it's going to happen in the next 7-8 years, but it could, and so the business stuff leads to a very comfortable financial living for me. Right. And then, the poker stuff is great. I guess I didn't know how much money I made during the series. I wasn't paying attention. I actually saw they actually send you a sheet, all your buy-ins and how much you made. And I happen to sell pieces of myself in the 100K and the 50K that I didn't get in. And I tried to sell myself in the 50K pot limit Omaha, but the person I asked said, I can't legally do it right now. So I had to risk it. And so that was the one I hit for 750 or whatever. So, but anyway, yeah, it looked like I made 860,000 just during the series.
Oh, no, just 860 or whatever.
And then all the Heads Up matches. I mean, those add up. You beat Antonio for 100, 200, 400. That's 700K. In the final match where we put up 200 each, I had 185,000 of myself because I just didn't sell anything, and I just didn't bother making a lot of phone calls. And so then I beat Daniel 3 in a row. And so, and I probably had 190 of myself in that final match. And so, it's so, yeah. And those are the things that make you cocky though. Win, 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 win. And then it's a matter of, okay, at age 57, how do I make the life cycle of cockiness shorter? Because I want to stay on the beam. I want to walk on the beam. I want to stay focused. I want to play great. I call it keeping your head down. When you get all cocky, your head's up looking around, praise from a president, praise from this, praise from the billionaire, praise from people that you think are amazing are praising you. They're sending you texts, right? And if you heads up looking at all that, you're screwed. So I try to keep my head down. And then I think this book, Positivity, Jungle, Tony Robbins, I think you know who he is, but most of you
I've actually been intrigued about him lately. I'm thinking to take his course for multiple reasons.
Yeah, Daniel loved it. I took it. But you look at the back of my book, Tony Robbins he wrote this himself, this amazing jacket blurb from my book, Positivity. He tells people to buy my book.
I'm thinking I'm going to get the book too.
He tells people to buy my book in advanced seminars.
That's impressive. I'm not going to lie.
I mean, when I found that out, I was walking around. My ego was a little big for a week, right? Because Tony Robbins tells people to buy my book. It's just 8 life tips. It's what I learned. And so after I wrote this book, it took 20 years to write this book. Mm-hmm. I had this book, and I remember, that Elon Musk came to the book launch for this one,
No way.
And within 8 months, this book was out. Because this was the one that I wanted to get to, because it's 8 life tips is going to help everybody on the planet, Jungleman. Everyone will be helped by this book.
Well, I like that.
Tony Robbins telling people to buy my book in his advanced seminars, that just blew my mind, And so
I gotta
That
get
was
this
pretty
book if
cool.
it's gonna help everyone on the planet.
For sure. Well, I mean, listen, I can give you a couple of examples. All right. One chapter is just take your yearly goals and put them on your bathroom mirror. So, 2022 goals, tape them on your bathroom mirror. So now it takes you a couple days to decide what those goals are in order. And so everybody that does this, they hit their first and second goal. I've changed tens of thousands of people's lives. I'm going to change millions of people's lives. That's one chapter. Take your life goals, write them down, your yearly goals. Sorry, life goals is another chapter. Yearly goals, and I'll write 2021 goals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I see that every day when I brush my teeth and brush my hair. And I see that every day and it sinks through. And so you kind of leave the house on path. And then one other one I love, Jungleman, is you look at the subtitle of this book, you're always in the right place at the right time. So I show people how that's true. And the one example I can share with you that I use in the book is this. Say there's two people living side by side. They both have 3 kids. And they both discover the 8 perfect reasons to have their dream, a sports bar. Okay. One person tells his wife and his kids, these are the 8 reasons, right? Even his wife's inspired listening. The kids maybe ignore him. But, his wife's inspired, right? He's like, oh, this is great. Then he says, Martha, please pass the peas, which is code for I'm done with the idea. Carl Westcott, a great man, gave me the Martha, please pass the peas, talking about people at the dinner table with all these great ideas, and they don't do anything with them. The guy next door, same situation, same amount of kids.
You know what?
The 8 perfect reasons for a sports bar, okay? Right? He makes one simple adjustment. The other guy doesn't. He says, you know what? I'm going to stop by my favorite sports bar tomorrow.
There you go. I was about to
Now,
say, enough of us like talking about stuff and not doing it. Let's just do this stuff. It's like,
yeah, you do stuff. You're a doer. You don't need that lesson, but it helps to see it. And so what happens, Jungle? That guy on the way home from work, he opens the door to his favorite sports bar. But that door has been opened physically, but also figuratively. Behind that door, you can see you can see all the possibilities. By opening that figurative door and pursuing one step towards his dream, he could run into the owner of that sports bar. That's the next door. Talk to him. Maybe the guy says, I can help you with finances. Maybe the guy wants to sell him his sports bar. And so now you've opened a door, then another door, then another door, and then another door. That's what great people do. They open doors and they end up with the perfect sports bar. That's what they do. But the rest of the world says, Martha, please pass the peas. And so this is an example from this book, which takes 70 minutes to read, okay, that shows the world they're in the right place at the right time. Most people aren't ready for that.
That I happen to completely agree with. And that's actually because of that kind of philosophy. You illustrate it in a totally different way through a more real world example and like some of the things that actually can happen. This is part of the reason why I do some unusual things, such as things that don't result in actually making money, but that open up a ton of doors. This is partly why I went out and started my charity foundation, even though I didn't know the first thing about running a charity foundation, and I'm still learning. Of course, it's a bit complicated.
Jungleman, let me tell you, I talk about charity in my book too, right? And what you're doing, I've raised $66 million at events I've emceed. And sometimes, sometimes I see other guys talking about, and it doesn't matter. $66 million, maybe it's up to 70 million, right?
Oh, yeah,
and it's crazy. And I'm not saying that I do any of the work, but I show up, my name's on the event, and I MC the event. And I come in and I have the microphone for 8-10 hours. That's what I do. But let me tell you what there's a personal benefit for you and me. We feel more of a sense of entitlement to make a lot of money. So when I feel more entitled to make $1 billion because I've never cheated on my wife, because I raise a lot of money for charity, because I help a lot of people out, right?
Yeah.
And so then I feel more entitled to win, because I say, why not me? And now you're doing a similar thing. You're opening a charity. You make a lot of money playing online, but now you're using it for a specific good purpose. and you say, why not you? You're going to make more money in your own life because you're helping other people.
Well, I hope you're right, Phil. I really do. I hope you're right. It hasn't been working out that way so far, but my priorities have shifted. I had it's a subject for another time. Speaking of which, I know we're a little bit over time, Phil. I'd like to keep going. Do you have extra time?
Yes, hold on. Let me say one more thing, Shima. What you said was very interesting is this, Jungleman. You said, I think of the truth as being this amorphous blob.
Yes.
Called green in color. It's floating out there. So I came and showed you the one angle of why we're always in the right place at the right time. Tony Robbins comes from this direction. We end up agreeing exactly. And you're coming from a different direction. That's what you just said. You believe everything I said about being in the right place, but you come from a different angle. And so the more you can show the world this amorphous blob of truth.
Yes.
Which this book is this amorphous blob of truth.
Yeah.
And any great book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, is an amorphous blob of truth. It comes from a different angle.
It's a great analogy, actually. And I'm pretty much on the same. No, I agree about your analogy about truth too. I believe it's actually that there are. Part of the belief of the podcast is, in fact, I should say, an understated belief of the podcast is that there are, how should I say, truths that can be, there's a term for it, but I forget what it's called, truths that can be universally agreed on. But we're all kind of getting to that in the same kind of way, that like these are the ways that you actually succeed in life.
Yeah, I mean, the amorphous blob thing was interesting for me because I get to hang out with these really spiritually advanced people too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Mike, I like deep conversations. So I can talk to anybody about the Green Bay Packers or whatever, but that's boring for me after a minute. I love the Packers and I love talking about them for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
But I'm going to generally connect with people at the deepest levels. When I'm with, Steve Kerr, the Warriors coach, I wanted to ask him, I wanted to talk to him about how do you deal with ego and success. And he and I had very similar understandings of that. And so then when I'm with famous billionaires, same thing. How do you deal with ego and success? So I'm always looking inside. And the fact is, you and me, Jungleman, we can lose all of our money on any given day. We can go to the Bellagio high limit room and we can play whatever limit they're playing. Maybe we start at 5,000, 10,000. And then, if we get 5 million loser, then they'll be like, oh, well, we'll play 30,000, 60,000 with you, right? Because maybe you're off and they see you're off. And then all of a sudden it'll be 50 and 100,000. And either one of us could lose all of our money on any given day. That gives you incredible insight into yourself because you don't want that to ever happen. So you're always looking inward and learning lessons. And so, now I'm trying to share those lessons with the world in my book, Positivity.
It's perfect. No, it's perfect. I think that secretly, I'm similar to you in that I can talk about, I'm maybe even more stubborn in a way. I could talk about, the Packers. I don't even know what sport they play. Frankly, I don't know I know they're a sports team. I don't know what city they're from, even though you just told me. I could talk about like some sorts of superficial things briefly, but I prefer deep conversations as well. And I suspect that a lot of people are this way. Perhaps one, haven't discovered it to some extent or don't realize it, and two, don't know how to have them.
Correct.
I also want to say there's, at least in my opinion, in what you're talking about, in how the poker players don't see that in building relationships with these business people or in educating them rather than looking at them as like a fish to be devoured, if you know what I mean. And this is one of the reasons why I don't like the term fish, because it has the implication that a fish is like a target, like something to take advantage of. I think that a lot of poker players don't
hate that word. I rarely use that word. I agree.
I consciously try not to. I use the word VIP a lot, which is what they use in Asia. in fact. Oh, and by the way, I wanted to mention, maybe there can be like an Asian billionaire, other like USA billionaire match and see who wins. I'm honestly not sure. I think specifically Paul Fua would do really well. I don't know about the others, but we'll see. That seems like a fun thing. I think that would be something that would be entertaining to organize. I personally want to direct attention to an underlying concept of creating these situations, and this is what I personally believe in, creating these situations that are mutually beneficial, such as, for example, you teaching the businessman poker and them benefiting by learning, and then you benefiting by building a relationship with them, et cetera, et cetera. But my personal belief is that it seems almost common sense as I say it, is that if everyone looks towards build these greater than zero sum situations where both parties benefit and ignore the ones where people get devoured and that sort of thing, it points to sort of a bigger game. And this is the podcast. What's the word? Cue the podcast name. It points to a potential situation where all of us can win, if that makes sense. And it's kind of this big spiritual game of like, does the greater good win, or what is the purpose of making all this money, sort of thing. What are your thoughts on this sort of subject, Phil? Well, I see.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think.
Huh?
I mean, I think, you talk about entitlement, and you talk about, like, I think the greater good is super important, right? So that's why. But because I've raised so much money, again, I'm going back to what I said earlier, because I've raised 66 million for charities, and we give money to charities ourselves. It makes me have a bigger sense of entitlement when it comes to connecting with businessmen. The connections there, it's not there a lot of times, but you can try. You can put a little bit of effort in. I think that one of my poker friends said that every single person that's a billionaire is evil, and I just laughed because I know like 20 billionaires, and
go ahead.
18 of them just created good stuff for themselves and the world. And so that's just a misunderstanding about some poker players, right? Now, if you came to me and said, hey, there's a percentage of guys that are worth 10 or 20 million or something that are bad, that might even be a different percentage. But it's actually some of the biggest businessmen in the world are some guys that have actually, gotten there by helping everybody, and they can only lift each other together. So, and they provided value for the world as well. So, but I think it's interesting that some poker players look at it as, oh, it's so binary.
I hear that a lot. And it's like, go ahead. I cut you off.
You're right though, Jungle. I would say, I would say when you're playing poker with someone, and they're interested in you because they're at the table with you, right? I'm interested in what they're doing. That's a natural interest, but I think poker players should cultivate that and learn that and find out how is this guy making his money, right? It's pretty interesting. And then sometimes you find yourself, by asking about him and by kind of understanding how he's making money, that you can sometimes then invest with him, either alongside him or into his business, or maybe he helps, maybe you go to parties with him and you meet other guys that are trying to raise money, right? That are doing some interesting things. And so there's this whole dynamic sitting right in front of poker players of a great way to mentor someone at the table and then be mentored by them, right? And then, and then you're going to help his poker game. He's going to enjoy playing more, and he's going to have more fun. And there's a relationship there where you're laughing and having fun. And then and then the other side, he could end up making you $1 million, $2 million, $10 million, God knows how much, because you're paying attention to what he's doing and you're drafting alongside him or drafting behind him, is a better way to look at it. But there's all these possibilities that exist for poker players all the time. And they're just oftentimes too focused on what's my maximum amount of money I can win. I don't want to coach this guy because I could make . No, that's a very bad view. Take a more nuanced view of the world.
And then I also think that they can be a common how should I say, a common subtle error of mindset is a lot of them, like you said, they're too focused on how do I get the most money, but they're not thinking I'm being really cold and being aloof and I should be more friendly or be more likable or make this experience better for the other person. Their error is because they're just not really thinking about how to make the experience actually better for the other person. And in doing so, the businessmen are like, I don't really even want to play or hang out with this guy because he's boring and wants my money and that's about it. Like why should I even try to connect with this guy kind of thing? I think this is a common mistake and mentality people have.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it even seeps through. It seeps through beyond that. In that, how should I say? If it seeps into the culture, and that it creates this culture of people just trying to win, and poker reduces to this super competitive situation where all it is about winning, and it's, you know, when you see the tournaments on TV, everyone's super serious and like that's the only fucking thing they care about, and then it's not really attractive to a lot of people who are playing recreationally. They don't think about how are you going to create an environment that's welcoming and that sort of thing, let alone how do they or I or whoever's in the poker player's shoes become friends with the businessman that can help me, sort of thing. And I think that people are I see that you're not like this way at all. I think that people are just too focused on this, like, what's in it for me sort of thing.
I'm going to ask you a question, Jungleman. Now it's going to come across as bragging, but I guess that's how I come across anyway. How much money do you think I've helped my friends make?
It's actually a good question. And by the way, it doesn't come across. So maybe a tiny bit brag. Well, whatever. It'll be okay for the sake of.
When you hear the number, you're going to think it's bragging. Take a guess. Right.
I am curious. Define friends. Is it like business people or
just friends that I hang out with 3-4 times a year that I'm friends with, or sometimes more often than that.
Okay. 3 or 4 times a year is like pretty loose for friendship. I'm not.
My best friend is Chamath, so I hang out a lot with him. But
All right. If Chamath counts, does it depend on, like, if you provided the strategic vision for Chamath? Well, first of all, that sounds like kind of an impressive feat. I don't know if you get full credit. I'm going to have to say some number greater than 20 million. I don't know.
Okay, so you're off by about 70, 70x. So I've made my friends about one, let's say today I'd have to look at the numbers, maybe 1.2 billion. I've made my friends. Okay, really? So the first one, Chamath went public with. Chamath went to meet with David Stern and wanted to buy an NBA team. And David Stern said, sorry, there's nothing available right now. So he landed, he called me, he said, damn it, I can't buy a piece of an NBA team. About a month or two later, I was with Joe Lacob, the Warriors owner. He's like, yeah, the strike is coming up. I might want to sell 10, 11, 12% of the team. I called Chamath. I put him and Joe Lacob together. I introduced him. I walked into the room with them, with Joe and his son, Kirk, and me and Chamath. And Chamath agreed to buy 10 or 11 or 12% or whatever it is of the team for around between, I think he said 400 million valuation. Now, the Warriors were just valued at 5.5 billion. So if he put, and this is stuff he's talked about already. So, so if 10% of the team, that's $500 million. So maybe put in 4, that's 460 million, right? So that's a deal that, basically he wanted to buy a team and basically I walked him into that deal. I found that deal for him. How? By listing. I wasn't looking for the deal for him. He just mentioned that I wanted to do this, and my friends mentioned they wanted to sell. Now you look at the SPAC that we did, where we launched Rush Street Interactive. So my friend is, CEO of the company, and it's public what he has, so he doesn't mind me talking about it. but he's up roughly $700 million because my SPAC took him public. Now, you could argue that his company, Rush Street Interactive, was going to go public through another SPAC. So that's true. So maybe I get zero credit. But I can tell you that he gives me a lot of credit because I put him with great people, and now they're floating at, I don't know, I'd have to look up the number. They might be floating at 5.7 billion right now or something. Just look up RSI. So that's two guys that, you know, you look at, all right, so we're talking about 1.1 billion, 1.2 billion. Okay. Now, there's all kinds of other connections I've made between businessmen too that have led to a lot of money, right? And so those are just two of the big ones. And so, you know, you find yourself, you know, in these situations where you know all of these people, right? And you have all these connections, right? Niccolo De Masi is behind our SPACs. And Niccolo hired me for a cell phone company. They gave me $500,000 worth of stock options, right? Basically to promote their phone. Okay, the phone didn't make it. But when Niccolo called me to apologize, I said, no, don't apologize. Please let me know what you're doing next, right? And meanwhile, one of the most famous women in the world hosted this book launch party for me for Poker Brat, and Elon Musk showed up. Elon Musk and a bunch of famous, Elizabeth Holmes was there actually. She's been in the press a lot, you know, at least 70-80% of people know who I'm talking about. But it was kind of this crazy fun party. And my friend was there, Niccolo, and he's like, wow, you know everybody. And so he decided, when he called me, I said, tell me what you're doing next. I want in early. And he let me put 300,000 sponsor money into this company because I know if you do business with somebody and they don't make it the first time, you always ask, I want to be involved the second, third, fourth time. We've seen this 100 times where the second, third, or fourth one hits, right? And he's like, wow, Phil, thanks for having confidence in me. And that's led to a lot of money for me. That's 3 SPACs I talked about at the beginning of the show that are all floating for billions of dollars. And I've made a lot of money. I put 500,000 the second one and 500,000 the third one.
Wow.
You know, when that stock hits 30, I'm at 4.5 million. I put this money in a year ago, right? I mean, and so that's been a lot of fun for me. But by providing value, right? And by showing people, but my network is so deep that those possibilities exist where I can make people literally billions of dollars. And so that's been really fun for me. And that's a story I love to tell because I just figured it out recently.
I'm curious how you got started because you mentioned your network is deep. I would imagine a lot of people that are listening to this can't exactly say they know, you know, like any of these guys. Or
I didn't know anybody in 2001. I didn't know anybody. Nobody. 2002, nobody. I slowly started meeting people. The fame helped because a lot of the A-listers wanted to meet me, right? Mm-hmm. And then, you know, as you know, I would do an event, say for a big company, and the CEO of the company would come up and say, hey, you know, tell me about what you're doing. And I'd say, all right, let's have a drink and a cigar. So the CEO and I would head off, just the two of us, after the event was over, and we'd sit by the light, under the light somewhere in Pebble Beach, smoke a cigar and talk. And he'd tell me about how he made all of his money and how he's successful. And then sometimes some of the most famous billionaires in the world come to me and they say, Phil, help me with my thinking about what I'm doing next. And I'm like, what? How can I help? And then they sit down and I give them my opinion and they're like, wow, that was enormously helpful for me, right? And what will I say? Well, I'll just say, well,